Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Joanne, and I'm a typical Dutchman. And I react to all kinds of videos about life and living in the US or life and living in Europe or the Netherlands specifically. And if you like this kind of reaction videos, then please consider to subscribe to the channel and like the video, of course. It would be really appreciated because we're still in a growing phase. And for today, we're going to take a look about the video of the infographics show the truth about living in America versus Europe. We did one yesterday. That wasn't that great of a great comparison because it was not that. It was only about a couple of weeks in Spain versus some experience in the US. Was not a fair comparison. So hopefully this is a better comparison, the truth about living in America versus Europe. So let's take a look at the infographic show, what they have to say.
Who's got it better, Europeans or Americans? Let's find out. First up, round one.
Who got it better? Okay. So we're talking about, I guess, quality of life.
And it's all about the money. $100 can buy you a lot more in Poland than it can in the US. So comparing actual wages doesn't tell you much about the standard of living. That's why economists use purchasing power parity, or PPP.
Purchasing power parity. Yeah. No idea what you're talking about, but doesn't mean that you have to compare your wages and taxes, etc., but your purchasing power.
It compares what people earn to what their money actually buys where they live. For example, the average wage in Britain is roughly $3,900 a month, but once you adjust for prices, the PPP figure comes out closer to $3,200. In Germany, average wages are around $5,900, but in PPP terms, that drops to about $3,700. Some European countries do well even after adjustment. Switzerland sits at around $6,500 a month in PPP terms. And then you've got countries like Greece, where the average monthly wage is only about $1,200, but once you factor in lower prices, the PPP figures come out closer to $2,300. So in terms of cash, Europe is a mixed bag.
Yeah, we know, but I didn't know that it was this kind of difference. Germany, that much? I didn't know.
In the U.S., wages vary by state, but according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average American wage is just under $1,300 a week, or $5,200 a month. Once you adjust for purchasing power, it jumps to something like $6,900 a month. Does that mean that Americans are balling it? Well, we'll find out at the end of the round, but first let's see how they stack up on the money pyramid. The U.S. is home to an extraordinary concentration of wealth, roughly 22 million millionaires at about 8.5.
Oh man, 22 million millionaires. Okay. And 8.5%
of the population, and there are more than 900.
Oh, that is 8.5% of 900 billionaires.
At the same time, there are tens of millions of Americans who see a day out at Red Lobster like they're living like a king. The UK is similar. Around 3 million millionaires are about 5.8% of the population, and another 55 billionaires.
If I see these numbers, I guess, how many millionaires do we have in the world? But wow, 3 million millionaires. It's unimaginable.
Only Germany, Russia, and Italy have more billionaires in Europe. Countries like France, the Netherlands, Spain, and Switzerland also sit high in the league tables of mega wealth. But if you are living in Baltimore or in Birmingham, billionaires don't exactly improve your life. So wages aren't the whole story. What really matters is what is left once the bills are paid. Across the EU, roughly 20 to 21% of people are classified as being at risk of poverty, and the poverty rate in the UK is roughly the same as the EU average, around 20 to 21%. Across the pond, the official US poverty rate comes in much lower at around 11%. Let's add in here that being poor in Ukraine is a very different experience from being poor in California. There's no single data set for this across the EU. In Western and Northern Europe, a typical household might have $200.
It's going in high speed through the numbers. Personal budget $200 to $600 a month.
To $600 a month left over once essentials are covered. In Southern and Eastern Europe, it's often closer to
Wait.
In Western and Northern Europe, a typical household might have $200 to $600 a month left over once essentials are covered. In Southern and Eastern Europe, it's often closer to $60 to $300. In the UK, the average family has about $700 a month of discretionary income, but many have $120 or less a month, barely enough to cover having a little bit of fun, never mind savings. 1 in 6 adults, 16% in the UK, has no savings at all. But EU data said 40% of people were not able to put aside any savings in a typical month.
Wow. Okay. I didn't know that.
A Bankrate study found that 61% of U.S. adults are living paycheck to paycheck as of July 2025. And surveys suggest that around 1 in 4 Americans have no emergency savings. And since the 1970s, wages across Europe and the U.S. have stagnated, while prices, especially housing, healthcare, and education, have surged. EU citizens on average can save 13 to 15% of their wage, whereas in the U.S. the average was 4.5%. Putting that all together, America takes the point. 1-0 to the USA. Round 2 deals with...
Okay. So, money-wise, it's better to be in the United States. I didn't think so. Because of all the depths that there are in. One sick day isn't paid off, etc., etc.
with the work-life balance. On average, people in the EU and the UK work at around...
This is a different one. The work-life balance.
36 hours a week. Greece is at the high end, roughly 40 hours, while the Netherlands is at the low end, around 32 hours.
Yeah, I know.
Americans work closer to 41 to 42 hours per week on average, about 8.4 hours a day. In the U.S.,
yeah, 41 to 42 on average. But I heard the day before, that they have a hustle and not a hustle, so they work more, to closer to 60, 70 hours a week just to come by.
U.S. paid vacation isn't guaranteed by law. It's up to your employer. The average private sector worker gets around 10 to 14 paid vacation days a year. Even after 20 years with the same employer, many workers top out at around 20 days. Sick leave doesn't improve much either. Many U.S. workers start with around 10 to 11 sick days, which barely increases over a full career. By law, EU workers must receive at least 20 paid vacation days, regardless of tenure. And in practice, the average is closer to 25 to 30 days. The UK guarantees 28 paid days off, which can include public holidays, but that is the legal minimum. Once you add in public holidays, most European workers are looking at 30 or more paid days off per year. In the US, there is no legal requirement, meaning some workers get as few as 11 total paid days off, vacation, and sick leave combined. Sick leave in the EU differs a lot between countries, but in general, people have much more protection. So, on work-life balance, Europe gets a point on the board. It's 1-1. Round 3 looks at health costs. And let's be honest, we probably already know where this is going.
Health costs.
500,000 to 650,000 Americans file for bankruptcy each year due to medical bills. 66.5% of bankruptcies in the US are medical, 8.2% in the UK, but much of Europe has hardly any or none. And when it comes to prescription drugs, the US is often cited as the most medicated place on the planet. It's also got the most expensive drugs too. People there take more antidepressants than any other nation. Talk about a medication nation. But one thing that makes people unhealthy in the US is obesity. Roughly 40% of adults are obese, far higher than almost anywhere in Europe.
40%. I know there were a lot of people obese, but 40%? Wow, that's a lot.
where the average obesity rate is 17 to 18%. And obesity isn't just about indulgence, it is tightly linked to poverty, bad nutrition, stress, trauma, and depression. Georgia, Romania, and Hungary have the highest rates in Europe, although the BBC cites OECD data saying that the Brits are the fattest people in Europe. Why? Well, both the British and the Americans eat the most ultra-processed foods, which for poor people make up much of their diet. At 58 and 57% of the US and UK's diets, scientists call this a very negative aspect of modern life.
Oh, ultra-processed foods diet. Yeah, eating pizza. Not self-made pizza like I do sometimes, but bought right out of the fridge, going in the microwave or in the oven, and then eat. Yeah.
The average in the EU is 27%, and people generally have more access to healthier cooked food. Europe racks up an easy point, 2-1. Now it's time for round 4 and something millennials and Gen Z can only dream about: housing. Some of
Housing.
Europe's cities like London, Paris, and Barcelona are very expensive, but prices can be very
About buying or renting a house.
low in other parts of the country. The US is similar, but you usually get more square feet for your dollar. A 2-bedroom apartment in San Francisco will cost you $3,600 a month, which is
Where?
a 2-bedroom apartment in San Francisco will
2-bedroom apartment in San Francisco. Okay. SF. Yeah. About 3,600. Ooh. Oh.
cost you $3,600 a month, which is tough going if you earn the minimum wage of $19 an hour. A similar type of place.
Minimum wage of $19? Wasn't there one you said that minimum wage was $14 and some cents an hour, or $15? Was this one?
Which is tough going if you earn the minimum wage of $19 an hour. A similar type of place in London will cost you over $2,300. Impossible if you're living on the UK minimum of about $16 an hour. American children typically grow up with more living space than their European counterparts. On average, US homes are roughly twice the size of British homes and also significantly larger than homes in most of Europe. That extra space is a real quality of life advantage. Still, even though the US wages versus housing costs are very bad, you get a little bit more bang for your buck throughout the whole.
Yeah, but I was thinking about what happened in London, because he was talking about London. So I was thinking about what is it for a 2-bedroom apartment in Amsterdam, because that's one of the highest top country cities of the Netherlands, in the Randstad. So let's take a look. So on average, the average rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in Amsterdam is usually between 1,800 and 2,500 euros a month. Wow. That's a big one. Back to the video.
Whole of the US than you do throughout Western Europe. Also, affordability indexes that compare housing prices to local wages put dozens of European cities far higher than the vast majority of US cities. Moscow, Istanbul, London, Athens, Lisbon, Split, Prague, we're looking at you, and many more too. This round goes to Team USA, 2-2. Let's keep this moving with round 5, transportation. While around 41.5% of Americans walk for leisure, only around 16% walk to work. Why? Because for huge parts of the country, there simply aren't viable alternatives to driving. Europe contains some of the best public transport systems on Earth. As for average commute times, the EU is 25 minutes, the US
for the best on Earth. I don't know. I have maybe some viewers who lived or work or are living in Asia. I guess the Asian countries does very well too. Japan and Korea and okay. EU commute 25 minutes.
US is 27 to 28 minutes, although in the US it's usually by car and in the EU by public transport. That said, running a car in the US is relatively cheap by rich country standards. Studies suggest Americans typically spend around 55% of 1 year's salary to buy and run a car.
To buy and run a car, 55%.
Compared with around 89% in the UK, second only to Finland. France and the Netherlands aren't far behind. Most people still drive, so on transportation costs alone, we'll put that one in the US column, 3-2 America. Round 6 deals with smarts, and it's all about education. In the US, you're looking at around $30,000 to $31,000 for in-state public universities, but that goes up to $49,000 for out-of-state public universities. And if you're intending to rub shoulders with the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world at a private university, it could set you back as much as $63,000. That's for everything: tuition, fees, room and board, and books. So it's a rough estimate. To cover the costs, kids borrow, which is why the average student debt after college is around $30,000. Let's see how Europe fares. Costs vary enormously depending on which country you study in. For 4 years, we might be looking at between $35,000 and as much as $110,000 all over the EU. In England, the most expensive in the UK, 4 years could set you back almost $50,000. The average student debt in the UK is approximately $55,000. Even students in Sweden, where the tuition is free, could be saddled with an albatross of 20 grand. Europe is a very mixed bag, so for education costs, it's a draw. The score stays the same, America still holds a 3-2 lead. They say children are our future, but how do things stack up with fertility and family? Let's find out in round 7. Across the EU, the average birth rate now stands at about 1.38 children per woman, well below the replacement level.
What else? Per woman. Okay, per woman.
In 2023, Bulgaria was the highest at roughly 1.8, followed by France and Hungary. At the bottom were Malta, Spain, and Lithuania. It's the exact same story in the USA, but at an average of 1.6 children per woman, it is higher than most of Europe. How much is it going to cost you to have kids? Well, raising a child in the US from birth to age 18 now costs between $300,000 to $400,000.
You must be a millionaire to raise your kid. $300,000 to $400,000.
Raising a child in poor rural Ukraine and raising one in an English boarding school is not in the same ballpark. But let's just go with the average again. Say raising a child to 18 can cost anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000 in Europe. But if you're poor or a low-income family, Europeans usually have more paid maternity and paternity leave, more subsidized childcare, and more safety nets in general. Both sides make strong arguments, so let's call it a tie. It's still 3-2 to Team USA. Can Europe make a comeback? Let's find out. In round 8, things get dark. It's the alcohol and substance abuse quickfire round. One major reason for all of that dying young in the US is what economists call deaths of despair, now the 5th leading cause of death in the US. In 2022 alone, more than 200,000 Americans died from drug overdoses, alcohol abuse, or decided to clock out on their own terms. Since 1999, over 1 million Americans have died this way, more than the total number killed in all of the US wars of the 20th century combined. Until about 2013, these deaths were concentrated among the middle-aged white Americans.
Wow. Oh my God. 1 million? Like he said, more than in the Second World War?
More than the total number killed in all of the US wars of the 20th century combined. Until about 2013, these deaths were concentrated among the middle-aged white Americans without college degrees. But when fentanyl flooded the drug supply, black men were hit just as hard. Women die from deaths of despair too, as do young people, but men die at far higher rates. When it comes to alcohol-related deaths, countries like Denmark, Finland, Slovenia, and Germany rank high. Rates all over Europe are much higher than in the US. So Europe edges out this round, and we're tied up 3-3. Now that we know how people are dying, what's the life expectancy like? Let's find out in round 9. On average, Americans have worse health outcomes than people in other high-income countries, despite paying more for healthcare. US life expectancy sits at around 78.4 years, 75.8 for men, and 81.1 for women. The difference between the richest and poorest can be 7 to 14 years. Across the EU, the average life expectancy is closer to 81.7 years. Bulgaria is at the lower end at around 75.9 years, but the US is worse than most of Europe. Surviving birth is another matter that experts
Surviving birth. Oh, they really look at everything.
take into account when trying to ascertain the quality of life. In 2023, there were 3.3 to 3.4 deaths per 1,000 live births in the EU.
The baby or the mother? I'm not sure. Child death or the mom died during giving birth.
But the US is worse than most of Europe. Surviving birth is another matter that
Surviving birth. So it's about surviving birth. It means child death. Yeah, okay.
experts take into account when trying to ascertain the quality of life. In 2023, there were 3.3 to 3.4 deaths per 1,000 live births in the EU. In the UK, it was 3.9 to 4.0 per 1,000. But the US was way worse, hitting 5.61 per 1,000. Crime stats change all the time, so let's compare the extremes. The UK often appears toward the worst end of European rankings, with cities like Birmingham, Manchester, London, and Bradford regularly cited for the highest crime rates on the continent. Outside of France's Marseille or Italy's Naples, not many Western European cities rival them, so let's compare the UK and the US. Homicide rates are about
Let's compare the UK with the US, because the rest of the continent, we don't know anything about crime that high. It's not fair. We have our crime, but not in that much as this in the United States. Oh no.
6 per 100,000 in the US compared to Europe's overall rate of roughly 2 per 100,000. Only Russia comes close. So Europe walks away with a point, extending the lead to 4 to 3. But at the infographic show, we're not all doom and gloom, so let's have a bonus round. Happiness and quality of life. According to the World Happiness Index, Finland, one of the countries with the highest rates of death and despair in Europe, is the happiest. Those dark winters must be tough. Denmark, Iceland, Sweden, and the Netherlands are just below, with the UK and the US almost neck and neck in places 23 and 24. 10 European nations scored higher. Also, a recent quality of life index put the US in 22nd place, with 17 European countries above it. But let's take a look at how people report their life satisfaction, because all those stats don't tell us how people actually feel. While some nations might be naturally gloomier than others in their outlook, these surveys can still be meaningful, with 10 being the highest score. In a very large 2024 survey, the US on average scored a 6.72 for life satisfaction. Most of Western Europe was almost exactly the same, but much of Eastern and Southern Europe was much lower in the 4s or 5s, while Scandinavia was much higher in the 7s. Happiness is a personal thing, so let's just call it a tie and award no points. It's time to look at the scores. 4 to 3, Europe. It was a tight contest, but Europe just edged it out. But given everything you've heard, where would you rather live?
Yeah. Where would you rather live? I already decided. I live in the Netherlands and I'll stay over here. That's for sure. I'm not even thinking about moving to Germany or Belgium or any other country. I like where I am. The Netherlands is good enough for me. So, but 3, 4 for the Europeans. We're there. We're
Check
getting.
out Dumb Ways to Die US edition to see a
Dumb Ways to Die US edition. Okay. Interesting video again about comparing US versus Europe, but now with the real numbers and the real facts, without comparing France or Germany to the US or Germany to Texas, or single country versus a single state. Or this is the numbers, the average numbers of it. And what's clear, and that's what a lot of people don't see, and we know when we live in Europe, there is a clear difference between the northern part of Europe and the southern part of Europe. And I will not say there's a large difference, but there is a difference between the sunny side of Europe, Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, Greece, and the colder side of Europe, like the Netherlands, Germany, Norway, Sweden, etc. So, yeah, there is some difference, but yeah, in general, it's good to compare this, but it's impossible to compare Europe versus the United States without having the facts and the numbers like in this video is done. Very good video. I like it. And if you like this kind of videos and you want to see more, then this is a good place to start with. I have a new view, so I need to move my fingers a bit. Yeah, so this is this is a good place to start with. And otherwise, it would be really appreciated if you hit the subscribe button. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.